which forms part of the Palliative Care Research Network series. These are a relatively small group events to allow colleagues to share their experience and expertise on research topics of interest to our networks. Webinars are recorded and available on the Palliative Hub Professional. They're often shared widely and have large numbers of views over time. If you would like to enable captions, please do so at the bottom of the screen. And just to draw everyone's attention to a pilot special interest group that we are running for technology and palliative care. There is a sign-up option online in the Palliative Hub Professional under the tab of research. I think just to let everybody know that we are recording the webinar, but we will not be recording the discussion. So if you have questions, please feel free to ask questions through the Q&A function. I'd like to introduce our speakers for this morning. Firstly, we have Dr. Frances Cleary. Dr. Frances Cleary is currently Research Head of Division for the Mobile Ecosystem and Pervasive Sensing Research Division in the Walton Institute, Southeastern Technological University. Over the years, Frances has gained knowledge in various technical research areas, such as pervasive sensing, smart transport, healthcare innovation and informatics, experimental facilities, cybersecurity, privacy and trust. She's engaged with multiple companies driving digital innovation strategies and digital knowledge transfer. In her current role as Head of Division, Frances manages and guides a large group of researchers, PhD and postdocs, and technical leads, software developers and lab managers. We're delighted to have Frances along today. And joining her is Dr. Carolyn Blair. Dr. Carolyn Blair is based in the School of Nursing and Midwifery in Queen's University, Belfast. Carolyn is the lead research fellow working with an international multidisciplinary team across a portfolio of palliative care focused projects. Current research includes a Cochrane review on multimodal interventions for cachexia management in chronic illness, an integrative review on experiences of loneliness in life-threatening illnesses for patients and caregivers, and an interpretive phenomenological analysis of the lived experience of renal cachexia for patients and caregivers. And we're also delighted to have Carolyn along today. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Frances, and she's going to run us through the first half of the webinar. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks very much, Claire. Okay, can you just to check, you can see the first slide there, Jane, okay?
I can indeed, yes.
Great. Thanks so much. Okay, so I'm just going to give a little bit of a presentation today just on kind of different technologies, new emerging ones, or ones that maybe you'd like to consider, I suppose, down the line, or get an insight into what's happening in this space and might be of relevance to the palliative care sector and definitely the healthcare sector overall. Usually when, I suppose, we pull together presentations, we look for a nice image or whatever to put on the front of our presentation. For this one in particular, I said, okay, I'll see what the likes of ChatGPT, DALL-E would provide for me. We're in a kind of a world where these generative AI kind of tools are developing at really a rapid pace, and they have the capabilities from text to create different kind of applications, etc., or different kind of images. So just for the palliative care side, I was very interested to see what would actually it would actually produce from an image perspective to showcase palliative care and technology. And there's two different ways you can actually do this with ChatGPT and DALL-E tool in particular. On the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see you can actually put in some kind of text palliative care patients using technology. Using these type of buzzwords, you can ask it for a descriptive scenario that then it will input and generate kind of a fake image, let's just say, to some extent. And so you'll see there, you can see the actual scenario text that it provided me with, set in a bright, cozy, filled room in a soft light, a comfortable reclining chair, holding a modern tablet. The emphasis is very much on peace, tranquility, the sun coming in, etc. And here you can see below an image of a lady or an individual, a patient in a room with a handheld device, etc. On the right-hand side then is a different approach. You can actually just ask the tool to create an image using particular buzzwords. So the ones I wanted was around how technology supports palliative care. And down here you can see kind of an image of an individual in a bed, this very, very large kind of mobile device situated beside them. But again, kind of commonalities between the two images, the sun coming in, tranquility, serenity, comfort, relaxation. Just interesting to see how these tools actually produce and provide such images to date. Obviously, it's dependent on the text that you include, but that's just the way, one of the things that it, I suppose, generated, and how technology can be used that way. I suppose for today, when you think of technology innovation in palliative care, there's kind of key technological areas that come to the forefront in research. This slide and the next slide just gives a kind of an oversight of the main kind of core pillars. The telehealth there is, and the telemedicine, we all probably are familiar with it. It's to support kind of remote video calls, remote monitoring, how it can be used in kind of remote healthcare applications. You usually see different buzzwords like telehospice, telepalliative care in research publications, etc., and how it can open up different avenues providing palliative care to patients, particularly in remote areas. Through various different virtual consultations, patients can access specialized care, receive guidance on symptom management, etc. The next one up from that is electronic health records. We're constantly striving for a centralized kind of health record system, and the need for kind of real-time comprehensive data, to be able to assess more so in a real-time manner how people are suffering from chronic illnesses, the different trends to GPs, different insights into kind of admissions, let's just say, to emergency departments or hospices or other departments in the hospital, just to get an in-depth understanding of what's actually happening. And remote monitoring devices in another area. This is anything from wearables to smart garments, e-textiles, and how these devices can support tracking and monitoring of health vitals and biometric data in particular. Number 4 there is the communication platforms. Very complementary to the telehealth, etc., and how we can provide more real-time responses, coordinated care plans, and more reactive, let's just say, process of engagement. So a lot of work and research going on in these areas as well over time. The next one then, I suppose, is another kind of 4 main areas: pain management, palliative care, mobile applications, mixed reality applications, robotics, and artificial intelligence. Today, I'm going to delve a little bit more into the palliative care and the mixed reality side, the robotic side, and the artificial intelligence side in a little bit more detail. Bear with me. Okay, before we consider, I suppose, any technologies, from a technologist and developer's point of view, there is challenges that we need to consider from, especially in the healthcare perspective. We have to look at the human-centric type approach to these applications before we even sit down and write even one line of code. There's a whole phase of kind of an engagement before that, where we have to, with the end users, to consider the human elements, consider the privacy, the security concerns, their data, any breaches of data, how we can limit that, how we can kind of assess sensitive information, and how we need to deal with that in any applications or platforms that we roll out. There is other elements with to consider, such as accessibility and inclusivity and the digital divide. How are some people more tech savvy than others, etc., or how people can become a little bit more overwhelmed, let's just say, by technology, and that leads to a negativity or a lack of interest in it to adopt it or actually roll it out. So these are all other different considerations. I know Caroline will actually comment and present on these later, so I won't go into them in too much detail. Just from the technology point of view, as with a lot of applications and platforms that are being rolled out today, in behind it, there's the use of algorithms. Algorithms in the very basic manner are mathematical structures. They're mathematical models that pull in various bits of data and compute something to provide a little bit of intelligence. So I suppose when we look at the algorithms, whatever a developer is actually completing and developing, we have to look at, okay, is it actually completing what it says it does? Is there an element of it that we need to validate? And there's a whole area of explainable AI and trustworthy AI that goes hand in hand with any algorithm development. In complementary to this is the ethical AI considerations. Are we adhering with the algorithms that we develop to data protection laws, to ethical guidance? Huge area that's supportive and has to be considered right from the get-go for any kind of technological applications that we look to develop or seek to develop. One kind of area that I'm going to delve into a little bit more is the voice-assisted technology side of things. We call this natural language processing technology, and natural language processing, NLP for short, is a division of artificial intelligence. It kind of enables computers to interact with human language more naturally and intuitively, such as language translation, text classification, sentiment analysis, and speech recognition. There's been research in these areas around the use of such voice-assisted technologies, where they can listen into conversations nearly, and they can analyze kind of different patterns of speech, etc. There's other research around where NLP technology can extract information from electronic health records, and they can actually act, and through assessment of these various different metrics, they can look at more focused or advanced care planning and hospice referrals. So it's a huge area. It's actually exploding with the large language modeling kind of elements over the last couple of months, even as everyone see with ChatGPT, etc. Just with regards to the sentiment analysis feature of NLP technologies, this is quite an impactful feature, let's just say, that this technology can provide. It has the capability to analyze patients and caregivers' emotional states, attitudes, and their level of satisfaction. So there's a huge amount of research being completed in this area at the minute, and it can lead to different kind of elements around the identification of uncontrolled symptoms, whether it's nausea, whether it's pain. It can support advanced care planning, decision making, and it can also lead to various different prediction type elements from a palliative care perspective. There's a paper there at the minute to the right side of the screen. It's a scoping review paper, but it gives a little bit of an insight into how this kind of voice assisted technology, NLP language technique, is actually being used across multiple different kind of topic areas, such as mortality, prognosis, prediction, systems identification, decision making, etc. So it's a huge area and has huge potential to impact, let's just say, the healthcare kind of elements from a palliative care perspective as well. Just to comment, there's a lot of I suppose natural language processing, and as I mentioned, there are these large language models. This is what's driving ChatGPT and all these generative AI type tools. And it's, I suppose, NLP focuses very much on language analysis, whereas large language models primarily generate text. On the left side of the screen there, you'll see a little bit of a news item just around NVIDIA. NVIDIA are a really, really big chip company, but they're teaming up with this AI kind of healthcare company, and they're focusing very much on generative AI agents. These are kind of chatbots, but more intelligent chatbots. It's a mixture of natural language processing and machine learning combined. And they interact with humans through speech or text. Now, the interesting thing about this is they do state there that they outperform nurses on video calls and cost less. So this is obviously a pitch on their business model side, etc., and what they want to build out here. But the interesting thing is that they're looking at creating and building a kind of a healthcare agent that's more empathic. So it's a level of empathy that they're building in using these large language models. So they want to create this connection between the human and between these kind of the human connection between patients through these kind of chatbots, etc. So it's a whole other layer of interaction and trust, let's just say, or engagement that they want to actually roll out through these types of technologies and leveraging these large language models. Just to mention on the LLM side, it's a huge database that has to take into consideration different medical notation, different clinical terms, and these are all maybe different across different locations, different areas, different ways people work. So how technology actually engages with this and actually adopts it in a manner that's usable and effective for the end users is quite a big task. So it is just an example of like, this is how people actually use different terms, different kind of words, etc., to actually decide a diagnosis or an outcome for a patient. So from a technology perspective, the large language modeling kind of area, we'll be looking to adopt and see how it can impact this kind of element of it as well. And just moving on to virtual reality, this is a kind of a big area. There's a huge movement in this from a training and an education perspective at the minute. The equipment is moving quite fast, quite rapid. It's becoming smaller, more lightweight, more usable, user-friendly. And the possibilities of it are endless. I'm going to give just 3 examples today, 3 little videos, which I hope will play now at the minute. One is very much focused on VR therapeutics and the use of virtual reality, just for, I suppose, pain management, or how would I say it, if say someone in a palliative care scenario, different phases or whatever, say if they're in a bed and they couldn't actually get out to a beach, couldn't get out to a forest, etc., or even their own home, if they wanted to view a 3D view of their own kind of house, their home, their environment, to give them that kind of view of that for a sense of security, etc. VR technology is hugely beneficial in how it can actually be leveraged for that. What you're seeing here now, hopefully it's running okay, is a VR kind of environment of forest bathing. And again, it's been proven to provide an element of calmness, etc. There has been research into how it can be used for pain management or just comfort, etc. But there's a huge amount of more research that can be done in this area. Another example, this is a little bit more on the operational side, digital twins. Digital twins, I suppose, is a replication of anything from a city, a room, it can be a person, anything at all can be replicated in a 3D virtual environment. What I'm showing you here is an example. We're involved in a project that looks at the hospital, kind of, let's just say, of the future. We're engaging with in a project that's looking at developing and building out a hospital in 2 years' time in Bilbao in Spain. Now, what we wanted to do was create a virtual reality digital twin of this hospital, and we were given the plans to do it. So we actually created a 3D virtual image of the actual hospital with all the layers. We could actually go into each of the rooms with the VR kind of environment and VR headset. We can go into whatever level in the building, into any rooms, create different scenarios, any different kind of training kind of experiences, etc. So this is the capabilities of a digital twin. It can be used as very much an education and a training platform, but it can also be used in a manner to show the placement of it from a city perspective, from a functionality or an operational perspective, how it can be used. So in this view here, you can see the 3D model. This is the location in Bilbao in Spain where it will actually be built in 2 years' time. And we're able to scale the building up, to drop it in, to show the location of it. And as I said, each of these layers can actually, in a VR headset, you can go into the building, you can walk around the rooms, up the stairs, down the stairs, you can walk and create different engagement scenarios with individuals for whatever kind of training element you want to do. So I would say from a palliative care perspective, when you're looking at different hospices, different residential care homes, maybe it's a tool that can be leveraged not only from a planning perspective, but also from a training perspective down the road with nurses, with carers, and medical professionals in general. Okay, the next and final VR one is it's again linking into the training and educational space. I won't run all of this, I'll run some of it because I think it's quite a long one. And what you'll see here is a 3D avatar of an individual. What we're pushing to, I suppose, is there's more research going towards more photorealistic, real-time experiences. So you're moving away from animated avatars. You're moving towards more individuals. This is a 3D scan of, let's just say, it's actually our research tech lead in Walton Institute in the VR AR space. So you can actually create any scenario you want with this individual from a healthcare perspective. You can monitor their heart, monitor their breathing. You can step through various different processes of engagement. Again, a fantastic tool for an education and a training perspective with maybe interns or new nurses into the area, or new carers, or even from family members, maybe that need to be trained up in various different home care, palliative care scenarios that they may experience, and it's a first time experience for them. Maybe something like this could be a tool that could be used as an educational kind of element there. So again, checking the blood pressure, I think it goes on to check their temperature, etc. So it's a little bit long, so I'll move on from this. I'm just conscious of time. Smart garments and e-textiles, just to give you a brief insight into where things are at here at the minute. There's been a huge amount of research in smart wearables, smart garments over a number of years. But since I think COVID came in and out, there's been a lot more emphasis on remote monitoring in the home. So this has generated a huge amount of interest back into the smart wearable space and smart garment space in particular. And there's a lot more research going on around these fabric-based sensors, pressure sensors, capacitive touch sensors, stretch sensors, and how they can be applied across healthcare, sports rehabilitation, even industry level, etc. So there's huge potential here. It's a whole separate nearly presentation by itself on what's available out there in the space. But just to give you a little bit of insight into where it's potentially going. There's a lot of research in the States and MIT around this fabric edge intelligence and fabric computing. So what that means is they're actually looking at, like at yarn level, at a piece of thread level, they're looking at functional fibers. And what I mean by that is they want to be able to create a fiber or a piece of fiber that's the size or width or length of a yarn that is able to acquire data, compute data, and store data, so that you have something at that level that can be integrated and woven into your garments. And think outside the garments, it could be fabric, textile wallpaper, it could be fabric in your carpets, or anywhere at all in your bed clothing, etc. So anywhere that there's a fabric, there's this element of fabric computing in the future that the vision that could be created. And this is pushing ahead with kind of the next generation of smart clothing, or the smart clothing internet. Complementary to that, I think it will probably be a change in the modular design of such smart garments and direction that needs to go in order to be able to incorporate such intelligence and make it interchangeable, replaceable over time. So a huge area from even the retail perspective on the garments and the clothing and what can be done there. So I suppose we would probably like to think of intelligent fabric spaces. So these functional fibers can create these intelligent fabric spaces. And what does that mean for palliative care? How could it be incorporated into a kind of the palliative care intelligent fabric space of the future? Would it be a smart monitoring room? Would the intelligent fabric integrate different sensors that are kind of capable of monitoring vital signs, pain levels, or other health metrics in real time? Could it be an adaptive environment where the intelligent fabric in the room would actually adjust dynamically to the rooms or the patient's preferences, let's just say, whether that's regulate lighting, temperature, etc., or kind of create a more soothing, calming atmosphere? Is it like the possibility of voice commands or touch commands from the bed? You literally touch whatever piece of garment and you can actually call for assistance. You can adjust your bed position, or you can assess entertainment, different options. So again, if reduced mobility is there, what can the patient do? And you're empowering them a little bit more through such technologies. the kind of the last few slides I wanted to look at is more around the technology side of things, the interoperable system and applications. What's very, very important is co-creation and co-design. And this is core to all kind of technology applications that we look at developing or designing. There is a phase of kind of, let's just say, where we have to meet and get in touch with different kind of multidisciplinary expertise. We have to look from the human center side of things and research and look at kind of the individuals, their needs. Again, this is linked back to how tech savvy they are, what will work, what won't work. There's a huge phase to get to a requirements phase, let's just stage, before we go to actually even implement any sort of application or platform from a technology perspective. And this is the phase where we do need the multidisciplinary expertise of the different healthcare professionals across the board to be involved in such a process. Just to give an example, I suppose, this is kind of, we worked on, we had an Erasmus student over and we looked at a Peacock proof of concept mobile application. But part of his initial phase was to actually go and have a chat to some of the medical professionals to kind of scope out the user personas of the different kind of stakeholders. So again, as you see from these type of boards here, it's more or less about their goals, their current behavior, their fears, their frustrations, attitude and motivations. It's not really technical. It's more about to understand the end users and their needs and what they want and what would work for them. And then we would look at, I suppose, main different competitor review examples. Manage My Pain is one app that's actually out there, and I think it's still available at the minute. But again, it's to go in to try, see what applications are out there, see what the competitors are, see how what functionality, what features they're providing, and what we're doing that's might be doing it a little bit different or more advanced or more innovative. So as I mentioned, we did a kind of a Peacock with the Wireframe mobile application proof of concept, and we had a various kind of support from Dr. Brian Creedon and his team in the palliative care wing, and also my colleagues Catherine Kniff, Tom Welch and Geraldine Purcell too in SETU. So it was very much a manual process. We wanted to look at how we could put it into more of a mobile application type concept, but keep it similar to, I suppose, the design and user interface focus that people are used to from the manual perspective. So these here are kind of snapshots of some of the mobile applications screenshots that would be used to gather different kind of measurements, let's just say on a daily basis, from a patient remotely or in the hospital via their smartphone or their iPad. And then there would have been kind of supporting kind of larger where you aggregate all the data, let's just say, together. So you can look at it from, okay, this is what they submitted on day one, this is the time they submitted, this is the patient, and then at the end you could see a little bit of graph. And over time these would go up and down and change. So you'd be able to quickly assess, I suppose, the progress or the deterioration of an individual in more of a realistic real-time manner. Okay, so I suppose the last one I just wanted to comment on is robotics. Again, all these areas across the board are huge. I'm just giving a flavor of it today. There's a lot of advancements happening on the robotic side and the humanoid robotic side in particular. And this is being driven too by the generative AI and the large language models that I mentioned earlier. This one here is a Figure AI. It's first of its kind AI robotics company that's bringing a general purpose humanoid to life. So if you want more information or different kind of elements that you want to see regards this, it's figure.ai is the website to go to. So I suppose what's different about this is this one in particular, it's speech-to-speech technology. So this actual robot can it can process its environment, and it can understand what is being said to it. And then from the AI element that's incorporated or coded into it, it can actually write and rewrite its own embedded code and learn as it goes. So the aim of it is that they want the humans to feel empathy with the robot. Like they want to create robotics that, again, this is going back to the NLP side and the chatbots. It's empathy. Empathy is coming through as a very strong stream that's been focused on from the robotic side and the technology side. They want to create this more human level of engagement, where, and a level of trust to some extent. And they even do it through this robot. I don't think I've sound today, but through the vocal cords, or they call it vocal fry. It's a creakiness in the sound. It's how when people talk. So they're actually incorporating that element of it into the robotic kind of interface or communication element through the different scenarios that they show. I think there's a little bit of video here. It'll just show you actually the movement of the robot. So you probably can't hear it, but the human there is actually just telling them to give them the apple, asking them to pick up different pieces of paper, asking them to stack the cups, plates, etc. So you'll just see the different movements, different kind of interactions, this robot. And this is the latest one that's using generative AI in the background. So highly, highly intelligent in comparison to the previous ones that we'd see, the Tesla ones, etc. So I would say, like, my questions would be, if this is the way technology is going, and it's moving quite fast, what is the impact, I suppose, or what benefits or can it provide in palliative care in the healthcare landscape? Can it provide assistance with daily activities, such as getting out of bed, moving around, fetching items, etc.? Can it provide companionship and emotional support, monitoring, reporting, or medication management? When we look at talk about telepresence or telehospice or telepalliative care, is it going to be a robot in the room in the corner in the future that has telepresence capabilities built into them? And when you talk to them, then you actually have remote consultations between your patient and your caregiver or your healthcare provider, etc. From an end-of-life support, how could such robots support end-of-life care? For example, could they provide comforting measures such as gentle touch, soothing music, or relaxation exercises? So again, all open questions. Very, very interesting the way technology is moving, and it's moving quite rapidly at the minute. And it'll be very, very interesting to see where this goes in the future and the potential impact it has on healthcare in general, but also for palliative care, and what would work and what wouldn't work. That's it from me on my side at the minute.
That's super, Frances. Thank you so much. That was absolutely fascinating. I have some questions there. Hopefully we'll have time for them at the end. Thank you. Now we just move on to Carolyn.
Super. Brilliant.
Super stuff. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Frances, for that fascinating presentation. I know I've certainly learned plenty through that, so a big thank you. And to Jane and Mary as well for this opportunity. I suppose the reason I'm here today is my desire to progress work in this area of technology and palliative care. I've published a couple of papers focused on immersive tech in health and social care, and also, as I'm sure many of us have, I've designed interventions during COVID, and we were sort of shoehorned into that in many ways, in probably a very positive manner, that we had to get much more au fait with technology. So it, I think, has advanced our own knowledge, and also the knowledge of patients and caregivers as well. So also have a particular interest in patient and public involvement in research. So really bringing the different strands of the work that I've been involved in. I've been asked to speak today on what I see as the barriers and facilitators to integrating technology into palliative care. So just before I make a proper start here, you'll see through my presentation today, I'm generally conflating those in receipt of palliative care with older people. And I understand this isn't always the case by any means, that many younger adults and children can be in receipt of palliative care. However, I believe if we understand the barriers and the facilitators for those who are most likely to be the most difficult to reach, then this will help us with our general work and efforts to integrate technology into palliative care. So, based on the evidence from various systematic reviews and anecdotal work as well with patients and caregivers, 4 of the key barriers, and this isn't restrictive by any means, are the loss of human connection, and this is obviously linking into what Francis was talking about as well in regards to empathy, privacy and security, access and equity, and resistance to change. And we'll expand on these in a few minutes as well. So also you'll see on the bottom of this slide, I've added a reference, sorry, just back one there, Mary. I've added a reference to the regional digital health action plan for the World Health Organization. This is an area of which our colleagues, of whom I'm sure you know, Professor Joanne Reid and Professor Michael Shannon, they're both involved in it. And I've added this because it's really important to note that although what we're talking about today is really based on what matters to patients and caregivers, but in order for us to see some kind of systemic change in policy and funding, we really have to adopt a collaborative global, national and regional vision of how this is possible, and obviously taking on board the valuable perspectives of healthcare professionals, as Francis has already said. That's obviously within this document in particular. Nurses and midwives are stating the challenges that they face, and like for example, if digital platforms and tools aren't really speaking to each other, this can create major problems, which has a significant effect on the sustainable integration of technology for patients and caregivers. So moving on to the next slide there. So essentially the loss of human connection. I think I use this picture in particular, and linking again to Francis, all the images in this PowerPoint are AI generated images. So I've been more playing with it than anything, but I certainly enjoy the fact that you can produce an image using a few different words, and I produce them through Canva. But back to the importance of this image. I think technology became, how would you put it, essential, but also something which was depersonalized in some ways during COVID, in that the likes of someone who maybe were in their final hours of life, nurses had to hold up an iPad with their family members to say their goodbyes. And in some ways that's had negative effects, in that maybe technology has been looked upon as something that, it's depersonal, it is reducing empathy, or we can't properly connect with others through it. So the likes of these impersonal interactions can be a difficulty. Some people may believe that, I suppose, telemedicine consultations and remote monitoring systems can lack the warmth, the non-verbal cues and empathy associated with face-to-face interactions. And this can, in some cases, lead to feelings of disconnection and dissatisfaction among patients and caregivers. Also, the fears about reduced physical presence. I know technology, the idea is that we use it to complement the physical presence, but sometimes the fears would be that this can diminish the physical presence of HCPs. And again, this is particularly important for palliative care patients who value, as we all do, human touch, comfort and emotional support. So again, this can be a potential concern and loss of continuity of care. Some people can fear that the use of technology can disrupt this. And again, looking at disjointed care experiences and maybe interfaces not working properly with each other can erode trust and undermine that therapeutic relationship that patients and caregivers have with their healthcare team. So it's loss of communication is essentially a fear. And then moving on to privacy and security, this can also be a potential barrier. And what we've seen recently in regards to technology failing, for example, the post office, the Horizon IT inquiry, can erode trust essentially, and then stories about hackers, etc., can create further barriers for patients and caregivers and for all of us. We think about data breaches and again about linking this to electronic health records and telemedicine platforms. And obviously these platforms store sensitive patient information, and sometimes this, whenever patients and caregivers or healthcare professionals or even us as researchers don't fully understand this, it can cause a sense of fear and anxiety. And again, third-party access can be a potential barrier or potential fear, in that entrusting patient data to third parties can raise concern about data ownership, control, and unauthorized access essentially. Then again, about patient consent and control, and obviously when it comes to what's being designed, or what Frances has talked about, that evidently they're so vigilant in regards to their co-design processes and their consent and their control side of things. But for someone on the outside of digital technology, this can be a potential fear, and the lack of transparency and consent mechanisms regarding how data is handled can potentially erode trust. So on to then our third barrier, access and equity. And I'm sure we've all had some kind of personal experience with maybe a much loved family member where technology has posed a problem, or maybe we've had these types of problems ourselves. And I'm just even thinking about a family member I have who something as simple as a WhatsApp group where a person chooses not to have a smartphone, they're excluded from the likes of this, and so the digital divide is real. And again, what we're going to look at in a moment or two is about ways that we can potentially facilitate access. But again, disparities in access to technology and digital literacy skills as well can hinder certain populations' ability to benefit from palliative care technologies. And then about lower socioeconomic backgrounds or even rural areas, it's also important to consider these individuals, the likes of not having access to high-speed internet. I know we certainly had a problem with that for a while there, and thankfully we've got it resolved. But there's different aspects that we need to be very circumspect about when it comes to really understanding the digital divide. Financial constraints, obviously purchasing equipment and maintaining systems as well can put up barriers. And when we're thinking specifically about patients and caregivers here, patients without adequate financial resources, they might face barriers in accessing online platforms or in regards to connecting with healthcare professionals, if the likes of iPads and PCs, etc., aren't provided for these individuals. And language and cultural barriers again can be difficult and be, I suppose, a barrier essentially. We know that with the advances in advanced technology, that there's ways and means to overcome these barriers, and I'm quite sure Frances could speak directly to that, but it's something that may cause a problem. And then finally, in regards to a potential barrier, resistance to change is essentially a problem. So just popping it onto the next slide there, Mary. And even from my interaction with patients and caregivers and our own circumstance here within Northern Ireland, with integration of Encompass, much as it's a wonderful effort to create a single digital care record for every patient, so as they can look at it and update their health information online wherever they like, essentially. In talking to some patients and caregivers, that there has been a fear with this. They've felt forced in some ways to change, and I'm sure this isn't the circumstance for all patients and caregivers by any means, but there certainly has been stories of the fear of the unknown here, and also a lack of training and support tools. Whenever patients feel ill-equipped or unsupported in using any kind of technology, whether it's advanced or not, it can incite fear. So we do need to be aware of the need for technical support and for adequate training and clear guidelines to help patients and caregivers. So we'll get on to the facilitators to integration. And again, this is coming from a variety of different systematic reviews here, and just different areas which are important for us to consider when we're designing interventions, when we're designing projects, and thinking about prioritizing patient and caregiver needs and preferences. And I know this is just resonating with what Frances has said, which is brilliant in many ways. And I think it's also important to underpin design with the likes of a motivational learning theory, and we'll get on to that in a moment or two, ensuring accessibility and usability, promoting transparency and trust, providing personalized support, and also empowering through active engagement. And again, we'll go on to what specifically we're talking about in regards to this. So on to the next slide. Prioritizing patient caregiver needs and preferences. And again, linking with what Frances has said, user-centric design is also important. So designing with the end user in mind can really lead us towards more intuitive and user-friendly technology. And as we know, patients and caregivers are the experts in their own experiences and needs. So it is essential to involve them in the co-design process to ensure that the technology is practical, it's easy to use, and it aligns with their preferences. And again, thinking about personalization, we know that every individual's experience is unique, and every patient's experience with palliative care is unique. So, and is shaped by different factors such as cultural background, personal beliefs, and even their social support networks as well. So, and hence why we would believe that it's particularly important to involve caregivers in this process as well, not just the patients. And thinking about the need for greater personalization to enhance care and to lead to more meaningful and effective support, essentially. Empowerment is important in this realm in particular, and we've got a slide sort of dedicated to this a little bit later. As we know, palliative care is deeply personal. It involves complex physical, emotional, and social needs. And by incorporating patient and caregiver preferences, technology can actually be used to empower them to have a much more active role in their care and fostering that sense of control and autonomy. And technology can also be designed in such a manner that it upholds the dignity and values of these individuals. And I think this is something that again, can scare people, specifically in the realm of robotics. I think, and again, Frances, you'd be able to speak directly to this, but that the likes of a robot could replace a healthcare professional. What we want for those in receipt of palliative care is to have a dignified life and to have that empathetic connection as well, but also to feel fully in control of their care. And we can do this hand in hand with digital technology. So on to our next slide. And I believe this is important. We published a paper using this model. In particular, it was based on immersive technology in health and social care education. But I think it has relevance here. It's the AIIHPC model of motivational design, essentially, and about how we can encourage behavior change. So thinking about attention here, thinking about accessible interactive technology that evokes curiosity for these individuals and interest and enjoyment, so that we can capture these individuals' attention, essentially. And this can ultimately enhance their intrinsic motivation, making them more likely to participate in their care and also use digital technology as well. So The likes of relevance, again, this is 101 here, I'm sure we all know it. They must be perceived as relevant and meaningful to patients and caregivers, much as we may, in isolation, and I've done it before, come up with an idea, which I think is brilliant. It might not be what the patients and caregivers themselves want. So ensuring that we do meaningfully integrate these individuals into the co-design process is all important. Confidence. Many individuals facing life-limited illnesses might experience uncertainty and doubt and even low self-efficacy here. So technology can be designed, as we've seen through what Frances has said, that it can be designed with features that actually build users' confidence, clear instructions, positive feedback, opportunities for skill development and mastery can help to make them feel more capable, more empowered in managing their care and well-being. Satisfaction with technology is obviously essential for sustained engagement and behavior change, as we know. And I'm conscious of times we'll maybe zoom on to the next slide here because I want to leave some time for questions. Ensuring accessibility and usability here. Obviously, this is of paramount importance. It must be accessible to all individuals, regardless of their physical or their cognitive abilities. And equity and palliative care technology essentially means us leveling the playing field, so that whether that means whether there's enough financial support or additional technical support or additional training, so that everybody, regardless of their circumstance or abilities, has equal access to technology and palliative care, reducing the barriers to engagement. Reduce burden. So palliative care, as we know, can place significant burdens on patients and caregivers. So we do not want technology to add an additional burden to that. So what we want to do is to design technology that's accessible and easy to use to help alleviate some of the burdens, such as streamlining tasks or reducing cognitive effort, for example. And on to promoting transparency and trust. Obviously, what we need to do is to clearly communicate, providing clear and accessible information to patients and caregivers. And we know that we can speak in a language that someone outside of our area of speciality has no idea about it. Being conscious of these factors, that we can communicate in such a way that the layperson can certainly understand very easily. Privacy and security matters, and again, being able to communicate what lengths we've went to ensure that patient data is protected so that that does not cause a barrier. Feedback and transparency, encouraging this open dialogue with patients and families about their experiences of digital technology and palliative care is all so important. And on to providing personalised support. We need to address technological literacy, and we know that there's different levels of familiarity with technology compared to maybe younger generations, but we need to be personal in regards to the way that we tailor training, we tailor education and assistance for older patients, empowering them to use this technology. And this could be in different types of formats, as we said here, one-on-one tutorials, group workshops, online resources, whatever could help these individuals to become more au fait and comfortable with using technology. Supporting cognitive and physical abilities, again, just looking to this personal approach, building confidence and self-efficacy. As you've seen that this is in multiple slides here throughout, but it's also important to build the confidence and self-efficacy of the end users here to ensure that there's positive reinforcement and encouragement built into the design. Then on to empowering through active engagement. Peer support and learning is obviously important, and what we've seen through other projects, that older adults might feel more comfortable and motivated to learn and to adopt digital technology when they're part of a supportive community. People their own era being able to share and going through the same difficulties, being able to share their personal experiences is all important. Social connection and belonging, creating a community of users here is essential to helping technology to find a place that doesn't feel like a burdensome add-on for individuals. Sustainability and scalability, nurturing a culture of peer mentorship. Some individuals who are in receipt of palliative care may be much more digitally apt than or inept than others. So being able to utilize these individuals as mentors could potentially help for integration and also sustainability and scalability of interventions. Obviously, what we don't want is for interventions to come in and for it to be on the short term after we've went through an extensive training regime with patients and caregivers. What we want is for interventions to be essentially sustained. So thank you for taking the time to listen. I'm sorry those last few slides felt like a bit of a race there, but if you have any questions at all, I'll be delighted to answer them.